What if the one person you swore you would never need became the only person your heart refused to forget? The scorching Wyoming sun hung low over Cedar Ridge, throwing long shadows across the dusty main street. Horses stamped nervously, wagons creaked. Folks stepped aside when they saw Ethan Cole riding in. People always stepped aside for him, some out of respect, some out of fear, some because they had heard the stories. Ethan didn't look left or right, he never did. His black stallion, Midnight, moved with the kind of calm only a powerful animal understood. At 38 years old, Ethan was the richest cattleman in the territory, owner of 4,000 acres of hard-won land. His ranch stretched so far, a man could ride sunrise to sunset and still be on coal soil. Yet none of that wealth softened him. His shoulders were broad as a barn beam, his face marked by grief, his gray eyes cold as winter steel. He had once believed in love. He had once trusted a woman with his whole heart. That mistake had cost him more than money. It had hardened him. So Ethan rode alone, lived alone, and trusted no one. He planned to stay in town for only a few minutes, pick up supplies, ride back before the sun dipped too low. But fate didn't care about a man's plans, because the scream hit him like a bullet. It cut through the afternoon heat sharp enough to freeze him in the saddle. Then came the gunshots. 3 in a row. Horses rearing. People diving for cover. Ethan didn't hesitate. He spurred Midnight hard and rode toward the noise outside the town limits. Dust flew as his stallion thundered over the rise. Ethan reached for the Winchester in his saddle scabbard, instincts honed by years on a ruthless frontier. What he saw made his pulse jump. A stagecoach leaned to one side, a wheel broken. The driver was slumped over the seat, bleeding. 3 masked bandits circled like wolves, yelling at passengers to empty their pockets. And among those passengers was a young woman standing in front of an older couple, her arms spread as if she could shield them with her own small body. Her blue dress fluttered in the wind. Her auburn hair caught the sunlight, her chin lifted, steady and brave, even though her hands trembled. She had no gun, no protection, nothing but courage. Ethan's heart tightened in a way he didn't understand. He fired the first warning shot. The lead bandit dropped his pistol. The second shot sent another scrambling. By the time Ethan charged into the chaos, the outlaws were already desperate to flee. They mounted their horses and rode off, shouting curses. Ethan didn't chase them. The scene in front of him mattered more. He swung down from his saddle, boots hitting the dirt with a heavy thud. He checked the wounded driver first, then turned, and that was the moment she looked at him. Her eyes were green, not the pale kind, not the bright kind, but a deep, calm green like sage after a rare spring rain. "Are you hurt, miss?" Ethan asked before he could stop himself. She shook her head. "No, but the driver needs help." Her voice was soft, steady, and warm in a way that didn't belong to this harsh land. Together, they lowered the wounded man to the ground. Ethan noticed her hands, small, delicate, but steady as she tore strips from her own petticoat to make bandages. "You've done this before," Ethan muttered. "My father is the preacher in Cedar Ridge," she said. "I help him tend to the sick when I can. Abigail Reed." He froze. The name sounded familiar. Folks in town had talked about the preacher's daughter returning from school back east. He'd ignored that gossip, but looking at her now, he wondered how he had ignored someone who looked like a beam of sunlight in a place full of shadows. "Ethan Cole," he said quietly. Her eyes widened just a bit. "The cattle baron." There was no judgment in her voice, just recognition. Before he could respond, the older gentleman who'd been hiding behind her stepped forward, shaking with relief. "Mr. Cole, we owe you everything," he said. "Just happened to be riding by," Ethan replied. His voice came out rougher than usual. He didn't know why. They righted the coach together. Abigail climbed inside to keep pressure on the driver's wound. Ethan took the reins and guided the stage back toward town with careful hands. All the way there, he felt her presence behind him, her soft voice calming the older couple, her hands working with quiet skill, her courage still shining through the fear, and something in his chest, something he thought had died 8 years ago, stirred. At the edge of town, Reverend Reed rushed out, relief washing over his thin face when he saw Abigail unharmed. Abigail stepped down, brushing dust from her dress. Ethan dismounted and backed away, already rebuilding the walls around his heart. Crowds gathered. People thanked him. He hated moments like this. But then Abigail walked toward him again. "Mr. Cole," she said gently, "you saved us." "It was nothing." "It wasn't nothing," she insisted, and then she pressed something small and embroidered into his palm. A handkerchief. Soft, delicate. Her initials stitched in the corner. "A small token," she said, "for a great kindness." Their fingers brushed. A jolt shot straight through him. "I hope this isn't the last time we speak," she whispered. Then she walked away, leaving him standing there with a handkerchief that suddenly weighed more than a saddlebag full of gold. He rode home before the sun set, telling himself nothing had changed. But that night, lying in his empty bed inside a house built for a family he never had, all he could see were sage-green eyes and a brave girl facing down outlaws with nothing but faith. He tried to sleep. He failed. Something had shifted in Ethan Cole's world, and deep down, he knew it. He had saved Abigail Reed from danger. But she might be the one who could save him. Ethan Cole woke before sunrise, the way he always did. But this morning felt different. He blamed the handkerchief. It was still folded in his vest pocket, soft and light, but somehow heavier than any burden he had carried in years. He told himself it meant nothing, just courtesy. Just gratitude. Except gratitude didn't keep a man awake half the night. He stepped outside, breathed in the cool dawn air, and forced himself to focus on the ranch. Cattle needed tending. Fences needed mending. Work kept the mind steady. Work kept the heart safe. By mid-morning, he was deep into the day's routine when Jake Patterson called out from the front gate. "Boss, rider coming in!" Ethan shaded his eyes. A single horse approached, kicking up dust. As it drew closer, his chest tightened. Abigail Reed. She wore a simple riding skirt and blouse, her hair braided loose down her back. She sat tall in the saddle, but her hands were tight on the reins, as if she was holding her courage together. Ethan stepped forward before he realized he was moving. "Miss Reed," he said, unable to hide his surprise. "What brings you all the way out here?" She dismounted and gave a small smile. "I've come to repay my debt." "There is no debt," Ethan said firmly. "I don't need anything." "But I need to do this," she replied softly. "You saved my life, Mr. Cole. In my family, debts of that kind are never left unpaid." He folded his arms. "And how do you plan to repay something like that?" She lifted her chin with calm determination. "By working. I can cook, mend clothes, tend wounds, clean, help manage accounts. I know a ranch this size must need an extra pair of hands." Jake, standing behind Ethan, hid a grin. "Boss, we did just lose our cook. Charlie left last week. My biscuits ain't making, the boy's too happy." Abigail brightened. "Then it's settled. I'll cook." "It ain't settled," Ethan snapped. "Miss Reed, this is a cattle ranch, not a place for—" "A lady?" she finished quietly. "I am not made of glass, Mr. Cole. I grew up on the frontier. I know hard work." Ethan tried again. "Your father wouldn't approve." "He knows I'm here," she said. "And he trusts me to honor my obligations." The ranch hands had stopped pretending to work. Half the bunkhouse stood watching shamelessly. Ethan felt cornered, and he hated feeling cornered. "1 week," he said finally. "You can stay 1 week to do whatever it is you think you need to do. After that, you go home." Abigail's eyes warmed. 1 week, then. "But there are rules," Ethan added sharply. "You sleep in the guest room. You lock the door. You stay away from the bunkhouse at night. And you don't ride out alone. Ever." Quote, "All reasonable," she said sweetly. Jake muttered under his breath, "Lord help us." By noon, the entire ranch smelled like heaven. Fresh bread, real vegetables, beef stew seasoned with something magical. The men stormed the dining tables like a pack of starving wolves. Abigail walked among them with a coffee pot, making sure each man had enough to eat. They sat straighter, spoke gentler, washed their hands, and even used napkins. It was a miracle. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching. Something strange twisted in his chest. He didn't understand it, didn't want to understand it. Abigail turned and caught him watching. "I saved you a plate," she said softly, "in the kitchen." He sat alone while she set a warm meal before him. It tasted better than anything he'd eaten in years. The stew reminded him of home. The pie tasted like childhood memories he thought he'd buried long ago. She noticed the bandages on his knuckles. "You were hurt yesterday." "It's nothing." "It's not nothing," she said, her voice steady but gentle. "You risked your life. The least you should do is take care of the injuries." Her kindness pressed against the walls he'd built for 8 long years. And the worst part, he wasn't sure those walls were strong enough anymore. The next morning brought problems. Jake rode hard into the yard, dust flying. "Boss, the east pasture wells dried up." "The drought's getting worse." Ethan's jaw tightened. "How many head out there?" "About 200. The drought had already killed off streams. Wells were next. The cattle, his entire future, were running out of water." Abigail stepped out of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "Is something wrong?" "It's ranch business," Ethan said. "Nothing you need to worry about." She didn't flinch. "I grew up around men who tried to shelter me from everything. It never helped. Tell me what's wrong." Ethan sighed. "If we don't find water soon, we'll lose cattle. Maybe a lot of them." She thought for a moment. Then her eyes lit with an idea. What if the ranchers worked together? "No," Ethan said immediately. "Ranchers don't cooperate. Pride gets in the way." Quote. "And what has pride ever brought you except loneliness?" she asked softly. Her words hit harder than a bullet. Before he could respond, a carriage approached. Dust rose behind it like smoke. Ethan's body went rigid. Josiah Blackstone. A rich, crooked banker, Ethan's oldest enemy. Blackstone dismounted with a slick smile. His eyes flicked to Abigail. My, the preacher's daughter at Cole Ranch, how interesting." Ethan stepped in front of her before he even registered the movement. "Say your piece and leave," he growled. Blackstone shrugged. "The drought's tightening its grip. You'll need water soon, Ethan, and I control the best water rights in the valley. I'm here to offer you a partnership." "No." "You didn't even hear the terms." "Because the answer is still no." Blackstone's smile darkened. "Careful, Cole. Refusing help in times like these can ruin a man." He tipped his hat to Abigail. "And Miss Reed, be wary. Some men bring misfortune wherever they go." Ethan's fists clenched so hard the knuckles whitened. Abigail spoke before he could. "Mr. Blackstone, I'll pray for you." Blackstone froze for a moment. His eyes narrowed. Then he climbed into his carriage and left. Ethan didn't speak until the dust had fully settled. "You shouldn't have come out here," he muttered. "You shouldn't face men like him alone," she replied. It was such a simple sentence, but somehow it cracked one more piece of his armor. That night, after the cattle were checked and the last lanterns dimmed, Ethan sat alone on the porch. Abigail stepped outside quietly, a shawl around her shoulders. "It's beautiful out here," she said, wild but honest. He didn't look at her. Most people find it too empty. "Not empty," she said softly, "just waiting. Like a heart that's forgotten how to hope." He swallowed hard. He had no words. Not for her, not for the storm inside him. For a long moment they stood side by side under the stars. The distance between them felt thin as a breath. Then she said the one thing that scared him more than any outlaw. "You saved me, Ethan, but I don't think you know how much you deserve saving too." He couldn't breathe. He couldn't look at her. And yet he couldn't walk away either, because Deep down, he knew she was right. Ethan Cole woke before dawn, heart pounding like he'd been running in his sleep. The house was quiet, the sky still dark. But something felt wrong. Too wrong. Then he smelled it. Smoke. He leaped from bed, pulled on his boots, and ran outside. A wall of orange light rose behind the barn. Flames screamed into the sky, crackling and roaring like a monster let loose. "The hay barn!" Jake shouted. "It's on fire!" Ethan didn't think. He just moved. The hay barn held all the winter feed. Without it, the cattle would starve when the cold months came. Men rushed from the bunkhouse with buckets, forming a frantic line from the well. Sparks flew across the yard, catching on roofs and fence posts. But none of that stopped Ethan. Not even when Abigail ran outside in her nightgown, hair loose around her shoulders. "Ethan!" she cried. "Where are you going?" "Billy Morrison might be inside," he yelled. "He was playing in there earlier." Abigail's face drained of color. "No, Ethan! Wait!" Quote. He didn't wait. He ran straight into the flames. The heat hit like a hammer. Smoke burned his throat and stung his eyes. The world blurred orange and black. He ripped his shirt over his face and climbed a ladder to the loft, praying it wouldn't collapse. "Billy!" he shouted. "Billy, answer me!" A weak cough came from the corner. Ethan followed the sound and found the small boy curled behind some old saddles, crying softly. Ethan scooped him up and held him tight. "I've got you, son. Keep your eyes closed." The ladder was gone, already burning. Flames trapped them in a ring of fire. Ethan spotted the hay door used for loading, a long drop. Hard ground. But it was the only way out. "Hold on," he whispered, and he jumped. They hit the dirt hard. Pain shot up Ethan's left arm. But Billy was safe. Tommy Morrison ran over, grabbing his son, and sobbing with relief. Abigail was suddenly at Ethan's side, her hands shaking as she touched his face and shoulders, checking for burns. "You fool," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You brave, reckless fool." Quote. He tried to laugh, but pain took his breath away. They carried him into the house. Abigail worked quickly, cutting away his burned shirt, cooling the burns, wrapping clean bandages around his injured arm and chest. Her gentle touch steadied the fire still burning through him. When she finished, Ethan caught her hand. "I'm all right," he said softly. "No," she whispered. "You're not. You could have died." Their faces were inches apart. Her eyes were bright with fear and something deeper, something he had been afraid to name, something he wanted too badly. Before he could speak, shouts rose outside. Jake burst into the kitchen. "Boss!" It was arson. Someone poured lamp oil around the barn. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Blackstone!" "We can't prove it," Jake said, "but someone wanted us hurt." Abigail stood still, her breath unsteady. "This is because I'm here, because of the well project. Blackstone sees Ethan as a threat, and I made it worse." Ethan grabbed her good hand with his uninjured one. "No, his greed started this long before you came. Don't you dare carry that blame." Quote. She shook her head. "Then I should leave, before more damage is done." "No." The word came out hard and fierce. "You can't leave." "Why?" she asked quietly. The truth pressed against his ribs. He wanted to say it, needed to say it, but the words stuck in his throat. He searched for safer ground. "The ranch needs you. The men need you. I need your help with the wells. You can't leave. Not now." Her eyes dimmed just a little. "Of course, because of the work." She stepped back. "I'll stay until the project is settled." It wasn't the answer he'd wanted, but it was the one his fear allowed. The next days were a blur of rebuilding, worry, and long nights. Abigail visited the families in town, speaking about cooperation. The ranchers began to join forces. The project gained strength. Hope returned, but so did danger. Ethan found himself watching Abigail more closely, listening for trouble, staying awake longer than he should. Every time he saw her smile at a ranch hand, teach a child, or bring food to a tired worker. Something tugged inside him, something he didn't know how to handle. Then Tommy Morrison collapsed with chest pains, and Abigail's quick thinking saved his life. The doctor said her actions had kept him alive long enough for help. Ethan watched her work, steady and brave, and he knew deep in his bones, that he couldn't deny the truth any longer. When Tommy was resting, Ethan pulled Abigail onto the porch. The sunset was red and gold, warm on their faces. "Your father came to talk to me," he said quietly. "He asked about my intentions." Abigail swallowed. "And what did you say?" "The truth, that I care for you more than I should, that I don't know what I can offer you." Her voice trembled. "And what do you think I want?" He stepped closer. "Tell me." She looked up at him, eyes full of hope and fear. "I want you, Ethan. Not your land, not your money. You." Silence fell between them, deep, heavy, everything waiting on one breath. He reached out, cupping her cheek with his uninjured hand. "Abigail, I'm scared." She pressed her hand over his heart. "So am I, but I'd rather face life scared with you than safe without you." And then, finally, Ethan Cole stopped fighting. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. A soft, trembling kiss at first. Then, deeper, warmer, full of everything he'd held back for 8 long years. She kissed him back with a fierce sweetness that made his knees weak. When they parted, she whispered, "What now?" He smiled, crooked and real. "Now I court you properly, and I'll fight beside you, and I'll fight for us." One tear slid down her cheek and he brushed it away. "You broke my every rule," he murmured. "And I'm glad you did." She rested her forehead against his. "And I'm not done breaking them." Behind them, thunder rumbled in the distance. Not the threat of fire, but the promise of rain. The drought was ending. And for the first time in years, so was Ethan's loneliness. They stayed there on the porch, wrapped in each other, while the sky darkened and the first drops of long-awaited rain began to fall. In the heart of the Wild West, Ethan Cole had finally found the one thing he'd sworn to abandon: love. Strong, stubborn, gentle love. And he wasn't letting it go.